Hey guys, so it is currently September, which means that applications for the Disney Store across the United States should be opening pretty soon here. I know that a whole bunch of Disney stores closed down over the last year, which I'm really sad about. The store that I worked at closed down this last year, which is really sad. But for those of you that are still lucky to have a Disney store near you and are thinking about applying, I thought that I would share my personal experience of working for the Disney store as a seasonal employee last year. So just a quick disclaimer before I start. This video, it's all just my personal thoughts and opinions. It's my experience working at the Disney store. My opinions don't reflect the Walt Disney Company in any way. I'm just making this video in the hopes that maybe it'll help anybody that's considering applying or has already applied and just wants to know what they're signing up for and what the process is like in getting hired and in working for the store during the winter season. So I applied last year in 2020 in late September. Typically this season for seasonal Disney employees for the Disney store are hired on from October to January so that they can be there for the Halloween season and the Christmas season and the chaos of trying to get everything back together after the Christmas season. So I applied in late September, so I was a little bit late to the game. It took me about a little over 2 weeks before I heard anything back. I applied through jobs.disneycareers.com, which is the Disney career website. So it took me about 2 weeks before I heard anything back. It said it was just in progress for a while, and I was starting to think I wasn't going to hear anything, but eventually I was sent an email saying that they wanted to schedule me for an interview. In about mid-October, I went in to the store, which was in a mall, in order to do my interview. I was fully prepared for this big scary experience. I've heard from other videos and from other people's experience that very often the Disney store does this sort of group interview format where they bring everybody in and it's kind of like an audition, so you have to do upselling improv exercises in front of everyone and all these energetic games and exercises and answering questions in front of everybody. I was fully prepared for that. However, I ended up just having a very normal job interview. It only lasted maybe 5 minutes. They just asked about my job experience. They asked why I wanted to work for the Disney store. I did arrive to the store about 10-15 minutes early, which is a really good thing to do because first of all, you do not ever want to be late to any sort of Disney interview or job or anything like that. They're all about timeliness, so definitely arrive early. And when you do that, you can while you're waiting, you can look around the store and kind of talk to some of the cast members, because employees, if you don't know, at Disney are called cast members. Everything's kind of in theatrical terms. So I got to talking with a couple of the cast members, got to know some of their names and who I might be working with, and some of those people ended up being some of my favorite people that I got to work with. So definitely arrive early. So at the end of my interview, the person who was interviewing me just offered me a job on the spot, which was really awesome. They said, "Would you like to work for the Disney store?" I said, "Absolutely." I think they were pretty desperate for people because I think with how simple my interview was and the fact that he just gave me a job right away, I think that my store was looking for a lot of people and they weren't getting enough people in with COVID. So procedures might be a little bit different even in 2021 with COVID happening currently. So I started about a week later, so I started right at the end of October, the end of the Halloween season. So I never actually got to work inside the store during the Halloween season because for my first week, and this seems to be true across the board, for your first week of working at the Disney store, you will be doing entirely computer training. That sounds terrible. I promise it's not. I actually came in, I was fully expecting to just basically hate it, because I've done computer training before at this hotel that I worked at, and it was terrible and boring, and you're trying not to fall asleep, and it's hours and hours. And I was scheduled for 5 or 6 days of this for however long it took me to get it done. It was awesome. So basically you get a number and you end up getting your access to this employee website called The Hub, and that's where I completed all of my training. As soon as I opened the first video, it was like, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm working for Disney. So all the videos were super Disney-fied, and so do you remember that like old VHS intro that like the "Here we go"?
We have our heading.
Here we go!
From the magic within our hearts.
Like, it was just fun. Like, it was a really fun week. Like, I didn't want to stop doing it because I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm working for the Walt Disney Company. And they definitely, your whole computer training week, like, they ingrain in you that you're working for legacy, you're working for this company that has done storytelling for decades. Like, it really makes you feel like you're a part of something, and it gets you excited to work for the Disney store. If you're worried about like any of like the storytelling aspects, because basically every single cast member is expected to be a part of like the storytelling aspect of Disney, it helps train you on how to do that. It helps train you on like the lingo. So yeah, it was a really fun week of computer training, which is a sentence I never thought that I would say. And that first week I was also given my badge. My first Disney badge. They asked me to pick my favorite character. I said Buzz Lightyear. That is absolutely not true. I don't know why I said. It was just so panicky because I was like, I can't pick any of the main ones because you had to pick one that was different from everybody else's. So apparently, I'm just gonna have this forever, Paige Buzz Lightyear, even though everybody knows when I was a little kid, my favorite Disney character was Woody, but I was like, I can't pick a main character, so I don't know, but I have my Disney badge, so I'm gonna keep this forever. And they did let me keep it at the end of the season. They did not ask for it back, so. All right, so as for the job itself, it was very simple to learn. It wasn't that hard of a job to do, especially for seasonal employees. They kind of like ease you into it. I had a much easier time than a lot of seasonal employees might have because with COVID, they decided that they weren't going to train any of the seasonal employees at my store to work the box office, is what they call it. It's instead of a cash register, it's a box office. So I was not trained to work the POS system. I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard. I've worked POS systems before, but that did seem to be the most complicated thing to learn. I didn't have to do that at all. I think they only ended up at the end of the season training one or two of the seasonal employees to use it, the people that had been there since the beginning of October, and those people did end up getting hired on for the rest of the year to be permanent employees until the store unfortunately closed down. One of my biggest suggestions if you're going to work for the Walt Disney Company is try to learn as much as you can. I definitely pushed and I was like, please train me on this, but they didn't have time to do it. Also, kind of just like a tip for getting hired for the Disney store in general, but definitely getting hired on in the long term, was also have as much availability as you can, because the Disney store is all about having availability, especially during the busy holiday season. That's probably their number one decision in hiring on their employees. Anyways, job itself wasn't that hard. One of the biggest things that seasonal employees did, and especially that I got put on doing a lot, especially because I got along really well with the manager of this specific area, is shipment. Basically, shipment is like 3-ish times a week. My store specifically, would get all of their shipment in for all of their merchandise. And so we would get anywhere from like 60 to like 280 boxes, huge boxes in, and it would take sometimes even just like an hour for the box people to bring them into our store. We would have them lined up all against the walls, and our job would be to process it, so unload it onto the shelves and on stage on the floor itself. This shift at our store was typically from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. It was just 4 hours. Sometimes we would stay later if we didn't get it all done, but we never had to. They would just ask us, does anybody want to stay later? I sometimes would stay an hour or two later. I was on those shifts about pretty much every time they did it, or maybe 2 times a week. Shipment, as far as I've heard, always takes place early in the morning or late at night, like until midnight. While I was there, it was always in the morning, but they always want at least some of the hours of shipment to be done while no guests are in the store, because it's a really great time to stock the store. Because when you're on the floor, when you're on stage, they don't really want you going backstage to stock things. They pretty much always want you to be on stage. So shipment is also a time to stock the entire store. So that being said, early in the morning, bright and early, 7 a.m., we would show up, we would wait for the boxes, and basically we would just be organizing the entire backstage shelves, putting security tags and security barcodes on. I think my favorite part about working shipment was that we got to wear our own clothes as long as it was Disney. So I bought an ungodly amount of merchandise while working for the Disney store. So I would just wear a pair of jeans and a Disney t-shirt. typically a long sleeve shirt because it was always snowing and cold. I'm from Colorado. When at the end of shipment, we would have to like go and like put all the boxes out in the box dumpster thing. So yeah, that was shipment. The other shift that we would get put on was basically the on-stage shifts. So that would be when you're working like physically in the store. On-stage shifts typically lasted for seasonal employees about 3 to 6 hours. For non-seasonal employees, it would be like 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours. They would work long shifts. Our store would open at 10 a.m. I would usually work like the opening shift, so I'd work from 9 a.m. to maybe noon or maybe 1. They didn't really like seasonal employees to work more than 4 to 4.5 hours at a time because Disney is really good with keeping on top of the breaks that they're required to provide by law. Like every other job I've ever worked, they ignore them and like they don't really follow the law, and you just are kind of expected to like not take a break, and that's just kind of like the work atmosphere. But Disney is like on top of it. Like they go on the radio and they're like, Paige, take your break, like now, like go. For every 4 hours you work, you're supposed to, at least for Colorado law, you're supposed to take a 10-minute break paid. And for every 5 hours you work, you're supposed to take a 30-minute lunch. And so they would try to avoid that. So 4 to 4.5 hours was typically the time that we would work. So working on stage was the fun part of the job. That was when we got to interact with guests. It was a lot of just like organizing and straightening and making sure everything looks good. And just like interacting with every single person that comes into the store. So one of the things you should know about working for the Disney store is it is still retail. It's a retail job. Like the work itself, it's not the most invigorating job you could ever have, but what makes it special is that you are working for the Walt Disney Company. So most of the people that come in, you're basically trying to make it feel like they're coming into Disney World. Like this is their little bit of Disney World in Denver, Colorado. So people would come in, the kids would be super adorable. They would be just like as excited as if they were walking into Walt Disney World. One of the biggest things that we learned how to do was, like I kind of mentioned, would be to like story tell. So every single little girl that comes in is princess, you know, or superhero or space ranger, you know, and you talk to them as if you're a part of the character. Like you are in the Disney universe. You're a character in the universe for those little kids. So you're not like a retail employee, you're a Disney character. And so if you're trying to call someone to deal with maybe a particularly difficult guest, you go on the walkie and you say, can I get a fairy godmother, please, to come help? You know, it's always, you always have to keep the Disney lingo on. You always, once you're on stage, you're on. So as for the physical work, you're just straightening, you're helping, talking to every single person that comes in, seeing if they need anything, letting them know what holiday specials are on. Sometimes it would get really slow and it would get kind of boring because you would just be kind of like straightening stuff for 2 hours and maybe like 1 or 2 people would come in. But when it's really busy, time goes by super fast and you get to talk to people that are just as excited and nerdy as you are about like Marvel, Star Wars, Disney. So it's a lot of fun. It's way more fun than like I imagine working at like Kohl's would be, because like everybody here loves the same thing that you love. So that's really cool. One of my favorite parts about working on stage was they always had this like big screen in the back that was just playing through loops of like Disney films, like or like Toy Story 4. So you always felt like you were in Disney, and it always just felt so magical. Like I would walk around and be like, oh my gosh, I work for Disney. Like this is so cool. And that would always make it feel really magical in the store. Also the team, like everybody that works at Disney, they're hired for a reason. Everybody there was just beyond friendly, just like so supportive. Like I never felt like I couldn't ask any questions. Like they want you to succeed and they want you to continue a career with Disney. So like everybody there was just super nice and supportive. Also working shipment, I got to see like all of the new stuff that came in. Some of this stuff wouldn't even be on stage for months. So we got to see like all the cool new merch. You kind of got to like pull back the curtain and see the magic from behind. So that was one of my favorite parts of working for the Disney store. Less favorite parts, there weren't many. Like I said, it was a pretty easy job, great team. I think one of the hardest things, which does apply to those of you applying in 2021, was dealing with COVID-19 related procedures. One of the jobs that we would have is they would always have one person just like standing in front of the store, making sure that everybody was complying with Disney's mask policy. You also had to make sure that like we didn't breach capacity limits, so you were counting how many people came in. And so I would sometimes have to like turn people away if they didn't want to comply with the mask policy. And there were a couple of times that guests would get extremely angry. I got cursed out a couple of times, and somebody was a little bit scary. So that was not fun. It's kind of hard to like respond in a Disney way. Not that like I have any problem. Like I've always been a very customer servicey person, but it's just hard to like look at someone screaming at you and just be like, have a magical day, sir. But that's what you got to do. And the nice thing is like they have this amazing management team where like if it ever got really bad, I could just be like, can I get a fairy godmother, please? And somebody would come up, and there were people that were really good with, they knew exactly what to do. They knew exactly what to say if it ever got too escalated. So COVID-19 makes things a little bit more difficult. Other than that, like, I guess sometimes it would just get a little bit slow. Sometimes the activities would be pretty kind of repetitive. I mean, there's not much to complain about. I was working for the Disney store. Like, ultimately, it was just a really awesome atmosphere no matter what you were doing, so. And finally, working for the Disney store, you do get a couple of cool perks. I don't think I'm allowed to like go super into detail talking about the perks specifically because I do want to work for the Disney company in the future, but we did get a small perk for entering the park that did expire once I stopped working there, so it didn't really do that much good because I was seasonal. But we did also get discounts on the merchandise, and I don't think I'm allowed to say the exact amount, but it was a nice little discount, so. I got so much stuff while I worked there, guys. I got like endless t-shirts. Oh, and you want to know the cutest thing is when I was done working for the Disney store, they gave me this little perseverance plaque, so I always can remember about my time working at the Disney store. Yeah, so that was my personal experience working at the Disney store as a seasonal cast member in 2020 to early 2021. If you guys have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in more Disney content, I'm planning on applying for the Disney College program and maybe eventually Disney Cruise Line one day, so let me know if that's something you'd want to see more of. Other than that, I hope you guys have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.